Back in the land of Oyinkon, the palace had been in chaos because every spiritualist the king consulted pointed fingers that the cause of Darasimi's disappearance was orchestrated by someone in the palace, someone close to the king. For this reason, the king summoned Queen Modupe and asked if she was the cause of her daughter's disappearance, but she said no. This question brought more agony and tears to her eyes, and that made her ask the king if she could hurt her own daughter. The king summoned Queen Itunu and asked if she was the cause of Darasimi's disappearance, but she also said no and swore she knew nothing about it, saying Darasimi was a daughter to her. The king summoned every staff within the palace walls and asked them the same question, but they all also said no. He even went as far as swearing a leniency oath for the offender, but they all still maintained they knew nothing about her disappearance. This made the king confused as to who could have hated his little girl so much, but he couldn't do much since no particular person was pointed to as the evildoer. But anytime he remembers the statement of the spiritualist, it made him hold on to the hope and belief that one day Darasimi would be back to the kingdom. As at the time all this happened, Queen Itunu already bore another child, another girl whom they named Princess Feishara. Now, while all this was happening in the land of Oyinkon, Darasimi one day told Bode how she would love to go back to her father's land. She continually begged Bode every day to help her get to her kingdom since he was human. But Bode, who hadn't stepped his foot outside of his village before, didn't know what or how to do that. So every day went by as usual. 4 years passed, and as all things good, being on Darasimi's side, it was the time for one very special festival in the land of Oyinkon. This festival was held once every 10 years, and it saw people from neighboring towns and villages coming to witness it. It was also a festival where different food delicacies were made available to cater for guests from both near and far villages. For this special festival runs through for a whole week. For this festival reason, Bode's father, being a farmer, was going to the land of Oyinkon to supply his harvested crops. So he packed his crops and told Bode he would be coming along because the journey would take 3 days from their land to that of Oyinkon and 3 days back. Darasimi's joy was above the roof when Bode told her he was going with his father to Oyinkon. She was going to follow him, but Bode's father refused Bode taking his cart when he told him about it. This refusal made him open up to his father about who Darasimi actually was and what had happened to her. So 3 days later, all packed and set, they all set out on their journey, and 3 days after, they got to the land of Oyinkon. On getting there, Bode's father was the only one allowed into the palace, while Bode and his cart went to the trader's hut provided for traders in order to wait for his father. When Bode's father got to the presence of the king to mark his goods and get his payment, he told the king about his son and Darasimi. The king was dumbfounded and told the palace guards to follow Bode's father to the place to see for themselves if it was true, and he instructed that if what he had just said was a lie, he should be imprisoned immediately. From where she was talking to one of her maidens nearby, the queen heard what Bode's father said to the king and immediately rushed out, telling the king she was going to see for herself if truly her long-lost daughter was at the traveler's hut. The king roared and refused because he knew that the queen reacts badly to cats, and if what Bode's father said was a lie, the queen would be ill for some months, terribly ill. But the queen wouldn't have it. In fact, she would rather be ill than for a chance of seeing her daughter be taken away one more time. So she rushed out of the palace and ran towards the trader's hut. As she ran, the villagers who saw her looked and wondered what was pursuing her. So in a bid to protect her and see what was making her run frantically, they all followed her. As soon as the queen got to the trader's hut, she saw Bode and his white beautiful cat, and instantly, with her mother's instinct, sensed that this was her long-lost daughter. With no second thought and with joy, she ran and held on to her, and as soon as she held her in a closed tight embrace, white smoke filled everywhere like a mist, and everyone fell and dozed off for 1 minute. Soon, the mist cleared while everyone grudgingly woke up, and there, Darasimi was on the floor, naked, curled up, trying to cover her nakedness. The villagers were shocked and surprised at what had just happened. The women amongst them quickly removed their extra clothing and covered her nakedness. They ushered her out of the hut with looks of surprises, astonishment, joy, and happiness written all over their faces as they joyfully celebrated the return of their long-lost princess. But while everyone woke up, the queen did not wake up. This made the palace guard rush to where she lay, lifted her up gently, and carried her to the palace. Now, as all this happened, at the same time, Queen Itunu screamed so loud in her quarters. She just suddenly looked dazed and stared into the open space in front of her. In a trance, she fell to the floor and just went limp. Nobody was there to help her up, so she stayed that way for a few hours. Back to the road leading to the palace, Darasimi was ushered in with joy and happiness. Upon seeing her, the king couldn't hold back his tears. He cried uncontrollably because his daughter, who had been missing for 10 years, was back. He held her in a tight embrace and planted soft kisses all over her face. But his joy was short-lived when he saw Queen Modupe being carried into her quarters by the palace guards, weak and obviously in slumber. Soon, nightfall came, and Queen Itunu wasn't seen around the palace all day. This made the king worried and asked for her whereabouts, and as they searched everywhere, that was when she was discovered in her quarters, helpless and weak. The next morning, the kingdom spiritualist was summoned, as Queen Itunu was in pain all night long, and this made the king worried. There, the kingdom spiritualist reminded the king about his statement to him when he was consulted about the disappearance of the princess a few years ago. Laying helpless, Queen Itunu was asked if she was behind the disappearance of the princess, and that was when she opened up. She said she loved Darasimi as a daughter, but the day she saw her gift, she was shocked. So she went to a witch to know what it meant. There she was told that Darasimi's gift was a powerful one, and if she was still in the palace, no matter how gifted her own children were, Darasimi's unique gift will always outshine that of her children. And to further make things worse, her own children might never ascend the throne. She was also told that Darasimi's gift was so powerful that she would be the most powerful ruler Onyekon ever had if she ascended the throne, and will set the pace for which Onyekon will thrive till the land existed no more. The witch further went ahead and told her Darasimi could be taken out. But for that to happen, she would have to be transformed into an animal and be taken far, far away from the land. That way, she wouldn't be able to find her way back to the kingdom. And since humans and animals can't communicate, it would be hard for anyone to know she was a human being in animal form. But then, transforming her into an animal would be impossible if her power was not weakened. So that has to be done. Weakening Darasimi's power was what would allow whatever charm that would be used on her to be potent. And the only thing that could weaken her power was the saliva of a weak-willed lioness's cub. The saliva was to be put into anything she uses on her skin. Now, getting the saliva of a weak-souled cub was hard. No one could obviously go close to the baby of a lioness. But when she saw that even the lion and lionesses warmed up to Darasimi, she used her innocence to get the saliva and get her evil deeds done. So on her 10th birthday, she casted the spell on Darasimi. The king couldn't believe his ears. He was still trying to gather his thoughts when a mist formed in the air. By the time it cleared, Queen Itunu had transformed into an animal, and before the eyes of everyone, ran out of the palace never to be seen again. As for Queen Modupe, she was still terribly ill, so the king couldn't tell her what had happened to Queen Itunu. He also instructed everyone not to tell her anything, as he only wanted her to be happy even in her ill health that their long-lost daughter was back. As the hours passed, the palace was a mixture of happiness and sadness. Everyone wanted to know what Darasimi went through, and all through that week, visitors trooped into the palace with gifts for both the princess and the sick queen. The festival week came, and it was a time of both happiness and sadness. But the festival couldn't be postponed, it just had to be done. Bode and his father attended the festival and were merry. After the festival, they were rewarded bountifully, with Darasimi further requesting that Bode be allowed to stay back in the land of Oyinkon to serve the king in his palace as his right-hand man, narrating how kind he was and the gift that he also possessed. The king, who was ready to do anything his daughter asked, granted her request. A few months passed, Queen Modupe got better, and few years after, it was time for Darasimi to pick a suitor amongst all the eligible suitors that had been coming for her hand in marriage. Sadly, she refused everyone, saying she wanted Bode to be her husband. The king did not refuse her request once again, because he had seen how mighty and great the land of Oyinkon would be if these two gifted children ruled the land. So with a joyful heart filled with gratitude, he gave them his blessings. And few months later, Bode and Darasimi got married before the happy people of Oyinkon. The kingdom of Oyinkon continued to prosper, but sadly, few years later, King Aderemi and Queen Modupe passed on, but not without seeing their two beautiful grandchildren. Olabode ascended the throne as the next king to rule the land of Oyinkon, and both him and Queen Darasimi ruled the land graciously. The palace thrived, as Darasimi carried along her siblings and step-siblings and accepted them as one. For everyone who heard the tale of Darasimi, it inspired hope in them that delay is not denial. It also served as a reminder to be kind to the world around you, and also that the reward for wickedness will always come, no matter how long it takes. For this reason, you should never have a wicked heart or go as far as carrying out wicked acts towards anybody. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Please don't hesitate to subscribe to our channel. It is free and it helps us to grow. Join us to listen to more amazing Nigerian and African folktale. And don't forget to like as well, as it encourages us to bring you more stories handwritten with love. Thank you.